Good evening and welcome. Tonight we will take a slow and peaceful walk through history, a quiet journey across deserts, mountains, gardens, and ancient cities. Our story begins in a land that has been known by two names. One name is very old and familiar to many people around the world: Persia. The other name is the one we see on modern maps today: Iran. For a long time, travelers, writers, and map makers used the name Persia. It appeared in stories about kings, poets, traders, and beautiful cities. The name carried a feeling of mystery and ancient wisdom. But today, when we look at a world map, Persia is not there anymore. Instead, we see the country called Iran. So tonight, as we relax and let the day slowly fade away, we will explore a gentle historical question. How did Persia become Iran? Was it a sudden event? Did something dramatic happen overnight? Or was it a slow and quiet change that unfolded over many years? As we move through this calm story, we will meet ancient empires, peaceful villages, thoughtful poets, and curious travelers. We will walk through old marketplaces, listen to the soft sounds of desert winds, and imagine life in a land that has been home to people for thousands of years. So settle in, take a slow breath, and allow your mind to wander gently through time. Let us begin our journey in a very distant past, long before the modern world, long before modern countries and borders. Imagine the land of ancient Persia. Imagine you are standing on a high hill at sunrise. The air is cool and quiet. In the distance, mountains rise like gentle waves across the horizon. Below them stretch wide plains and long deserts. Small rivers move slowly through valleys where people have built towns and villages. This is the land that we now call Iran. But thousands of years ago, it was home to many different tribes and communities. These people spoke different languages and followed different customs, but they shared the same land. Long ago, some of these groups were part of a larger family of people known as the Indo-Iranians. They moved slowly across the region many thousands of years ago, bringing with them traditions, stories, and languages. Over time, these groups settled across the land. Some lived in mountain valleys where the air was fresh and cool. Others lived on wide plains where they raised animals like sheep and goats. In certain places, farmers worked the soil, growing grains and fruits. Life moved slowly in these early communities. In the morning, families woke with the rising sun. Farmers walked to their fields. Shepherds guided animals across grassy hills. Children played near small streams or helped their parents with simple daily tasks. At night, people gathered around fires. They shared stories about their ancestors, about the stars above them, and about the mysterious forces of nature. These early people did not yet think of their land as Persia or Iran. To them, it was simply home. But over time, something important began to happen. Small tribes slowly grew stronger. Communities joined together. Leaders emerged who could guide many people instead of just a few families. As centuries passed, powerful kingdoms began to appear. And eventually, One kingdom would grow so strong that it created one of the greatest empires the world had ever seen. Now imagine that many centuries have passed. The quiet villages and small tribes have slowly grown into larger kingdoms. Cities have begun to appear across the land. Roads connect distant regions. Traders move between towns carrying spices, fabrics, and stories from faraway places. During this time, a group known as the Persians begins to rise in power. The Persians were one of the many peoples living in this region. Their homeland was in an area called Persis, which is located in the southern part of the Iranian plateau. From this place, the name Persia would eventually spread across the world. One day, a leader appeared among the Persians who would change history. His name was Cyrus the Great. Cyrus lived more than 2,500 years ago. At that time, many small kingdoms existed across the region. Some were friendly to each other. Others competed for power. Cyrus was known as a wise and patient leader. Instead of ruling with fear, he often showed respect to the people he conquered. Slowly and carefully, Cyrus expanded his kingdom. He united different tribes and regions. He built alliances with other groups. Over time, his empire grew larger and larger. Eventually, Cyrus created what historians call the Achaemenid Empire. This empire became one of the largest the ancient world had ever seen. It stretched across a huge area of land, from the mountains of Central Asia to the warm shores of the Mediterranean Sea. Many different cultures lived within this empire. People spoke many languages. They followed different religions and traditions. But Cyrus allowed them to keep their customs and beliefs. This made his empire more peaceful than many others. Roads connected distant cities. Messengers traveled across the empire carrying news. Markets filled with traders from many lands. Life inside the empire could feel busy and colorful. Imagine walking through one of the great cities of ancient Persia. You might hear merchants calling out in the market. You might smell bread baking in clay ovens. Bright fabrics hang from wooden stalls. Travelers from distant lands speak languages you may not recognize. In the distance, you might see a royal palace standing proudly above the city. One famous city of the empire was called Persepolis. Persepolis was not just a city. It was a symbol of the empire's power and beauty. Grand stone staircases led to tall halls supported by carved columns. Walls were decorated with detailed reliefs showing people from many nations bringing gifts to the Persian king. The empire continued to grow under later rulers, including Darius the Great. Darius improved roads and built new cities. He also created systems for taxes and laws that helped the empire function smoothly. For many years, Persia stood as one of the greatest empires in the world. And because of this power, the name Persia slowly became known far beyond its borders. Greek writers, travelers, and historians began using the word Persia when speaking about this vast empire. Over time, that name became popular across Europe and many other parts of the world. But here is a gentle and interesting detail. Inside the land itself, people often used a different name. They called their homeland something closer to Iran. The word came from an ancient phrase meaning land of the Aryans, which referred to the early Indo-Iranian peoples who had settled there long ago. So even during the time when the outside world spoke about Persia, many people inside the land already used the word Iran in their own traditions and stories. In a quiet way, both names existed side by side for many centuries. As the night grows calm and history continues to unfold, the great Persian Empire will rise and fall. New dynasties will appear. New cultures and religions will shape the land. And slowly, the story of Persia and Iran will continue to evolve. But that part of our journey belongs to the next chapter of our peaceful walk through history. Let us continue our quiet journey. The great Persian Empire created by Cyrus the Great lasted for many generations. Its cities were busy with trade. Its roads stretched across mountains and deserts. Messengers rode across the land carrying news from distant regions. But history, like the seasons, always changes. Empires rise slowly, and then one day they begin to fade. More than 2,000 years ago, a young king from the west began moving east with his army. His name was Alexander the Great. Alexander came from the kingdom of Macedon in the Greek world. He had grown up hearing stories about the powerful Persian Empire, and like many leaders of his time, he dreamed of conquering it. His journey took him across many lands. Step by step, his army moved toward Persia. Eventually, Alexander defeated the last ruler of the great Achaemenid Empire, Darius III. With that victory, the ancient Persian Empire came to an end. But even though the empire had fallen, the land itself remained. The cities, the farms, the traditions, and the people continued their lives. Alexander ruled the region for a short time, but after his death, new kingdoms appeared across the land. History began turning another quiet page. Over the centuries that followed, different dynasties ruled this region. Some lasted for many years. Others passed quickly like drifting clouds. One important empire that rose later was the Parthian Empire. The Parthians were skilled riders and warriors. Their land stretched across large parts of the Middle East. They controlled important trade routes that connected east and west. Imagine long caravans traveling slowly across the desert. Camels carry silk from China, spices from India, and glass from Roman lands. Traders rest at desert towns, sharing news and stories from distant places. These trade routes helped cities grow and cultures mix together. Later still, another powerful empire rose in the region, the Sasanian Empire. The Sasanian kings ruled from grand cities filled with palaces and gardens. They supported art, learning, and architecture. During this time, Persian culture became even stronger. Poetry, music, and storytelling were an important part of daily life. Skilled craftsmen created beautiful metalwork, fabrics, and carvings. Religion also played a central role. Many people followed an ancient faith called Zoroastrianism. This religion taught ideas about good thoughts, good words, and good actions. Fire temples were built where sacred flames burned quietly day and night. If you walked through a Sasanian city in the evening, you might see soft light glowing from temple doors. Priests in white robes move quietly through the halls, tending the fire. Life continued peacefully for many generations, but once again history slowly shifted. New cultures were rising nearby. New ideas and beliefs were spreading across the region. And eventually, another great change would come to the land of Persia. Let us move forward gently through time. It is now the 7th century. Across the deserts of the Arabian Peninsula, a new religion has begun to spread. Its message travels from town to town, carried by travelers, teachers, and communities of believers. This new faith is called Islam. As the religion spread, Arab armies also began expanding beyond Arabia. Their journeys eventually reached the lands once ruled by the Sasanian kings. After a series of battles, the Sasanian Empire slowly came to an end. But once again, the land itself did not disappear. The cities remained. The farms remained. The people remained. And over time, many people in the region began adopting the new religion of Islam. Life slowly changed in gentle ways. New mosques were built where communities gathered for prayer. Arabic became important for religion and learning. Scholars studied science, mathematics, medicine, and philosophy. But Persian culture did not vanish. Instead, something beautiful happened. The old traditions blended with the new. Persian language and literature continued to grow. Poets wrote verses about love, nature, wisdom, and the mysteries of life. One famous poet from centuries later was Rumi. His poetry spoke about peace, kindness, and the search for deeper meaning. Even today, people around the world still read his gentle words. Another beloved poet was Hafez. His poems often described gardens, nightingales, stars, and the quiet beauty of everyday life. Imagine sitting in a Persian garden on a warm evening. A fountain trickles softly nearby. Lanterns glow among the trees. Friends gather together while someone recites poetry under the night sky. These moments were part of Persian culture for centuries. Even though rulers and dynasties changed over time, the culture of the land remained strong. People still spoke Persian. They still told ancient stories. They still thought of their homeland using old words that had been passed down for generations. One of those words was Iran. The name appeared in old texts and poems long before the modern era. To many people living there, it described their shared cultural and historical identity. Meanwhile, in Europe and other distant regions, travelers continued using the name Persia. So for many centuries, the world used one name, while the people inside the land often used another. Both names lived quietly side by side. As the night grows a little deeper, let us continue our slow walk through time. More changes are coming to this ancient land. New dynasties will rise. Cities will grow larger. And eventually, the modern world will begin to shape the future of Persia and Iran. As our quiet journey through history continues, imagine the world slowly changing again. Centuries have passed since the fall of the Sasanian kings. The land once called Persia has seen many rulers come and go. Cities have grown. Markets are lively with trade. Gardens bloom beside mosques and homes. Now it is the early 1500s. In this time, a new dynasty begins to rise. This dynasty will shape the culture and identity of the region for many generations. The ruler who begins this new chapter is Shah Ismail I. Shah Ismail was still very young when he gathered followers and began building his power. Step by step, he united different regions under his rule. Eventually, he founded the Safavid Empire. The Safavid rulers created a strong and organized state. They built grand cities, supported artists and scholars, and strengthened the Persian language and culture. One of the most beautiful cities of this era was Isfahan. If you imagine walking through Isfahan during this time, you would see wide boulevards lined with trees, markets filled with carpets, spices, and shining metalwork, grand mosques with blue tiles that sparkle in the sunlight. At the center of the city was a large square where people gathered for trade, festivals, and daily life. Water flowed through gardens and fountains. The scent of flowers drifted through the warm air. Life in the Safavid period had its own rhythm. In the early morning, shopkeepers opened wooden doors to their stores. Bakers prepared warm flatbread in clay ovens. Farmers brought fruits and vegetables from nearby villages. Children ran through narrow streets playing games. Craftsmen worked patiently, weaving carpets or carving delicate patterns into wood and stone. Evenings were calm and social. Families gathered together to eat simple meals of rice, herbs, vegetables, and meat. Tea was shared. Stories were told. Sometimes poets or musicians entertained small gatherings. Their voices carried softly through quiet courtyards. During the Safavid era, another important change took place. The rulers declared that the official religion of their state would be Shia Islam. This decision helped shape the religious identity of the region for centuries to come. Mosques, schools, and centers of learning were built. Scholars studied religion, philosophy, and science. Even though the rulers called their land by various names, the word Iran appeared often in literature and official texts. It described the homeland of Persian culture and history. Meanwhile, far away in Europe, travelers continued to use the name Persia. So the two names continued their quiet coexistence. Inside the land, many people spoke of Iran. Outside the land, much of the world still said Persia. History sometimes moves in gentle layers like this. Different names, different traditions, all living together across time. Now let us imagine the 1700s and 1800s. The world is becoming more connected than ever before. Ships cross oceans. Merchants travel great distances. Explorers write books describing the lands they visit. During this period, many European travelers visit Persia. They walk through markets, visit royal courts, and write about what they see. One traveler might describe the shining domes of Isfahan. Another might write about desert caravans moving slowly beneath the stars. When these travelers return home, they publish books, and in these books, they continue using the name Persia. Maps printed in Europe show the country labeled as Persia. Scholars writing about ancient empires also use that name. So across Europe and many other regions, Persia remains the common word. But inside the land itself, people continue speaking Persian and referring to their cultural homeland as Iran. This difference is not a problem for most people. It is simply the way history developed. Two names, both connected to the same ancient land. During the 1800s, the country is ruled by a dynasty called the Qajar dynasty. Life during this time feels both traditional and slowly modernizing. In villages, farmers still work fields much as their ancestors did. They wake early, tend crops, and gather with family in the evenings. In cities, new influences appear. European goods arrive in markets. Diplomats visit royal courts. New schools and ideas begin spreading. Imagine a quiet afternoon in a Persian city during the Qajar period. A narrow street curves between clay buildings. Donkeys carry baskets of vegetables. A tea house sits on the corner where men gather to drink tea and talk about news from distant places. Inside the tea house, someone might read poetry aloud. Perhaps a poem by Sadi Shirazi, whose gentle verses about kindness and wisdom had been loved for centuries. Outside, life moves slowly. The sun warms the walls of the city. Children laugh while playing games in dusty courtyards. Everything feels calm and timeless. But the world beyond the city is changing quickly. New technologies are appearing. New political ideas are spreading. And in the early 1900s, the country will enter a new era that brings an important decision about its name. A decision that will shape how the world refers to this ancient land. Let us continue our slow walk through time. It is now the early years of the 20th century. The world is changing in many quiet but powerful ways. New machines appear in cities. Railways connect distant places. Newspapers carry news from across the globe. In the land long known to outsiders as Persia, people are also beginning to think about the future. The old royal dynasty that has ruled for many years, the Qajar dynasty, is growing weaker. The government struggles to manage the country. Foreign powers show increasing interest in the region because of trade and natural resources. Many people within the country begin to hope for stronger leadership and modernization. During this time, a determined military officer begins to rise in influence. His name is Reza Shah Pahlavi. Reza Shah was known for his strong personality and his desire to transform the country. Over time, he gained more support and power. In 1925, the Qajar dynasty came to an end, and Reza Shah became the new ruler. With this change began the rule of the Pahlavi dynasty. Reza Shah believed that the country should become stronger and more modern. He looked at nations in Europe and other parts of the world and wanted to introduce similar reforms at home. Slowly, new railways were built. Roads connected cities that had once felt very distant. Schools were opened so more children could learn to read and write. In some cities, new buildings appeared with modern designs. Government offices, universities, and institutions were created. Life in the country was changing. But Reza Shah also thought deeply about identity. He wanted the world to recognize the country by the name that many people inside the land had used for centuries. That name was Iran. To understand this idea, we must remember something from earlier in our story. For thousands of years, people within the region had used variations of the word Iran in literature, poetry, and historical writings. The word came from ancient languages and meant something like land of the Aryans, referring to the early Indo-Iranian peoples who had settled there long ago. But outside the country, the world still used the name Persia. This was largely because ancient Greek writers had used that name when describing the powerful Persian Empire of long ago. Over many centuries, that Greek word spread through European languages and eventually became the common international name. Reza Shah believed it was time for the world to recognize the country by its historical name. So in 1935, something quiet but important happened. The government made an official request to other nations. From that time forward, foreign governments were asked to use the name Iran instead of Persia in official documents and communications. And so, on international maps and in diplomacy, the name Iran began to replace Persia. It was not a sudden change for the people living there. Many had already used the word Iran in daily life and culture, but for the rest of the world it felt like a new chapter. Maps were updated, books began using the new name, newspapers wrote about the change. Slowly, the world adjusted, yet something interesting remained. The word Persia did not disappear completely. Many people still used it when speaking about ancient history, art, carpets, poetry, and culture. Even today, people often talk about Persian food, Persian poetry, or Persian architecture. Both names still carry meaning. Iran refers to the modern nation. Persia reminds people of the long and rich history of the land. In this gentle way, the past and the present remain connected. Now imagine the years slowly passing after 1935. The name Iran becomes more familiar across the world. International organizations, governments, and scholars begin using it regularly. But within homes, markets, and cultural traditions, the deep heritage of Persia continues to live on. Imagine walking through a city in modern Iran. Cars move through busy streets. Shops sell electronics, books, clothing, and food from many regions. Students walk to universities carrying notebooks and laptops. Yet not far away, you might still find quiet courtyards filled with trees and fountains. You might hear the sound of poetry being recited, or smell the warm scent of saffron rice and fresh bread drifting from a kitchen window. In homes across the country, families still gather to share meals and stories. Grandparents tell children about ancient kings, poets and travelers who once crossed the land. The culture remains deeply connected to its long past. Persian literature is still widely loved. Poems written centuries ago are read and remembered. Writers such as Omar Khayyam continue to inspire readers with their reflections about life, time, and the beauty of the world. His famous verses speak quietly about the passing of days and the importance of appreciating simple moments. In many ways, this connection between past and present is what makes the story of Persia and Iran so fascinating. The name may have changed on maps, but the spirit of the culture has flowed continuously through history. From ancient villages and imperial palaces to modern cities and quiet homes, the land has always carried its memories. And so, when we ask the question, how did Persia become Iran? The answer is gentle and simple. Persia did not suddenly disappear. Instead, the country chose to use a name that had already existed within its culture for thousands of years. The world simply learned to use that name as well. Iran. As our journey through history slowly comes to an end, imagine the land one more time. Wide deserts glowing under soft moonlight, mountains standing silent beneath the stars, ancient cities where poets once walked through peaceful gardens. This land has seen many empires rise and fall. It has heard countless stories carried by travelers and traders. Through it all, its people have continued their daily lives. They have baked bread in warm kitchens, planted trees in quiet gardens, and written poetry about love, wisdom, and the passing of time. For centuries, the outside world called this place Persia, and within the land itself, another name quietly lived in its language and traditions: Iran. In 1935, the world simply began using the name that had always belonged to the country's deeper history. And so Persia did not vanish. It simply revealed another name it had always carried. Now, as the night grows calm and peaceful, we can gently close our journey. History, like a quiet river, flows slowly through time. Names change. Empires rise and fall, yet the stories of people and places remain. Thank you for taking this slow walk through history tonight. Rest comfortably, and may your night be peaceful and calm. Let us continue our gentle journey for a little while longer. We have spoken about kings, empires, and the moment when the world began using the name Iran. But history is not only made by rulers and governments. Most of history is shaped quietly by ordinary people living their daily lives. So now, imagine a peaceful day somewhere in the countryside. The sun rises slowly above distant mountains. Soft light spreads across fields of wheat and small orchards of pomegranate trees. A rooster calls from a nearby farm and the day begins. Farmers step outside their homes. Some carry simple tools over their shoulders. Others guide donkeys or small carts toward their fields. Life in many rural villages has always followed the rhythm of nature. In spring, farmers plant seeds. In summer, they care for the crops. In autumn, they gather the harvest. And in winter, families stay closer to home, repairing tools and sharing long conversations beside warm fires. The food prepared in village homes often reflects the land itself. Rice, herbs, vegetables, yogurt, and warm bread are common meals. Sometimes there is lamb or chicken cooked slowly with spices. The scent of saffron or dried lime may drift through the kitchen as food simmers gently. Imagine sitting in a small courtyard while a meal is prepared. The walls are made of clay that keeps the air cool. A grapevine stretches across a wooden frame above your head, creating shade. Nearby, a kettle warms slowly over a small flame, ready to prepare tea. Tea is an important part of daily life. Across Iran, people gather around small glasses of hot tea many times throughout the day. Friends sit together and talk about family, news, and everyday concerns. Conversations move slowly, just like the tea being poured. Now let us imagine walking from the village toward a nearby town. The road is dusty but lively. Traders arrive with carts carrying carpets, copper bowls, fruits, and spices. When you enter the town market, you hear a gentle hum of voices. Vendors greet customers warmly. Shopkeepers arrange colorful fabrics and handcrafted items. The air smells of bread, roasted nuts, and sweet pastries. In one corner, a carpet maker sits patiently at a loom. Persian carpets are famous across the world. Each one is carefully woven by hand, often taking many months to complete. The patterns may include flowers, geometric shapes, or images inspired by nature. Each carpet tells its own quiet story. Nearby, another craftsman shapes copper into bowls and teapots. His tools make soft tapping sounds as he works. These markets are more than places to buy and sell things. They are places where people meet friends, share news, and enjoy the rhythm of daily life. In the afternoon, children leave school and run through narrow streets. Their laughter echoes between the buildings. As evening arrives, families return home. Dinner is shared together. Stories are told. Sometimes someone recites poetry that has been remembered for generations. Even in modern times, poetry still lives deeply within Iranian culture. The words of poets such as Hafez are still spoken in homes and gatherings. His verses often describe gardens, love, and the quiet beauty of life. Another beloved writer is Rumi, whose gentle poems about kindness and understanding continue to inspire readers around the world. These poems remind people to slow down, to notice the stars above them, and to appreciate simple moments of peace. And perhaps that is one of the most beautiful parts of this culture. Through centuries of change, through different dynasties and names, people have continued to value art, poetry, family, and community. As our journey gently moves toward its final moments, let us return to the question that began our story. How did Persia become Iran? At first, the answer may seem like a simple moment in history. In 1935, the government led by Reza Shah Pahlavi asked other countries to begin using the name Iran instead of Persia. But as we have seen tonight, the story is deeper and older than that. The name Iran had existed for thousands of years within the language and culture of the people who lived there. Ancient texts and traditions used words related to Iran to describe the homeland of the Iranian peoples. Meanwhile, the name Persia came from the ancient region of Persis, the homeland of the early Persian kings. When Greek historians wrote about the great empire founded by Cyrus the Great, they used the word Persia. Over time, that name spread throughout Europe and became widely known across the world. So both names grew from history. Persia reflected the ancient empire that amazed the classical world. Iran reflected the deeper cultural identity of the land and its people. When the modern government asked the world to use the name Iran, it was not replacing the past. Instead, it was choosing the name that had always existed within its own traditions. Even today, both words remain meaningful. Scholars speak of ancient Persian history. Travelers admire Persian art and Persian carpets. Readers around the world still enjoy Persian poetry. At the same time, the country itself is known internationally as Iran. The two names are like two chapters of the same long story. One speaks of the ancient past. The other speaks of the modern nation. Together, they remind us that history is never only one moment or one decision. It is a long river of time, carrying many memories with it. Now our peaceful journey through history comes to its quiet end. We began in ancient villages beneath distant mountains. We walked through the grand halls of old empires. We listened to poets in garden courtyards and watched merchants trading in busy markets. Along the way, we discovered how a land once known widely as Persia came to be called Iran. But more importantly, we saw that the spirit of the land never disappeared. Cultures change, names evolve, yet the stories of people continue across generations. And tonight, as you rest and allow your mind to drift toward sleep, imagine those quiet landscapes once more. Mountains standing beneath the moon, soft desert winds moving across the sand, a lantern glowing in a small courtyard where friends share tea and poetry. History continues to flow gently, just like the passing of time. Thank you for joining this calm walk through the story of Persia and Iran. Rest well, and good night. Before we fully close our peaceful journey tonight, let us spend a little more time exploring the traditions that have quietly connected generations of people across this ancient land. Even though rulers changed, borders shifted, and the name Persia slowly became Iran in the modern world, many traditions remained steady and comforting. Imagine a quiet evening in a family home. The day's work is finished. The sun has disappeared behind distant hills, and the sky has turned deep blue. A soft lamp glows inside the room, and the family gathers together on woven carpets. Someone pours tea into small glass cups. Tea is more than just a drink here. It is a moment of pause, a moment of conversation, a moment to sit together and slow down. Often, alongside the tea, there may be sweets made from honey, pistachios, or rose water. The gentle fragrance of these treats fills the air. While people sit together, stories are shared. Some stories are about family memories. Others are about famous heroes and poets from long ago. One of the most beloved literary works in Persian culture is the epic poem written by Ferdowsi. His great work is called the Shahnameh, which means the Book of Kings. This epic poem tells stories of ancient rulers, brave warriors, and legendary adventures. For many centuries, families have listened to parts of this poem being read aloud. Imagine a storyteller sitting in a quiet room. The listeners lean in as the storyteller speaks slowly and clearly, describing ancient battles, wise kings, and noble heroes. Even though these stories come from a distant past, they continue to be loved today. Another tradition that has lasted for centuries is the celebration of the Persian New Year, called Nowruz. Nowruz is one of the oldest festivals in the world. It celebrates the arrival of spring. When winter begins to fade and the first signs of new life appear in nature, families prepare for this joyful time. Homes are cleaned from top to bottom. Fresh flowers are placed on tables. Special foods are prepared for gatherings. One beautiful part of the celebration is the arrangement of a table known as the half-seen table. On this table, families place 7 symbolic items that begin with the same letter in the Persian language. Each item represents something hopeful, such as health, growth, happiness, or patience. During Nowruz, families visit relatives and friends. Children receive small gifts. Elders share blessings for the coming year. The feeling during this time is peaceful and hopeful, much like the arrival of spring itself. These traditions show something important about the land once widely called Persia. While political changes and historical events shaped the country, everyday life was always filled with small moments of beauty. Tea shared with friends, poetry spoken softly in the evening, festivals welcoming the changing seasons. These quiet traditions continue today across Iran and in Persian communities around the world. Now, as we come to the final moments of our long and gentle story, let us look back at the path we have traveled tonight. Our journey began thousands of years ago in a land of mountains, deserts, and early tribes. Over time, powerful empires appeared, including the great empire founded by Cyrus the Great. His empire became one of the largest in the ancient world and introduced the name Persia to many outside cultures. Later, other empires ruled the land. New religions and traditions arrived. Poets wrote beautiful verses about life, love, and wisdom. Through all of these centuries, the land remained rich in culture and history. Inside the country, the word Iran had long existed in language and literature. But outside the country, many people continued using the name Persia. Then, in the year 1935, during the rule of Reza Shah Pahlavi, the government made a simple request. They asked the world to use the name Iran in official international communication. From that time forward, maps, newspapers, and governments gradually adopted the name Iran. And so the land once widely known as Persia became known internationally as Iran. Yet the older name never truly disappeared. Today, both words still carry meaning. Persia reminds people of ancient empires, poetry, carpets, gardens, and timeless culture. Iran refers to the modern nation and the people who live there today. Together, these names form two layers of the same long and fascinating story. Now the night is quiet. Our journey through history has taken us across thousands of years, yet it has moved slowly and peacefully, like a gentle walk through time. Imagine once more the landscapes of this ancient land. Golden deserts stretching beneath wide skies, snow resting softly on distant mountain peaks, old cities filled with narrow streets, fountains, and quiet courtyards. In one of those courtyards, someone pours tea into a small glass cup. A soft breeze moves through the leaves of a tree, and somewhere nearby, a poet's words are being spoken quietly under the stars. The story of Persia becoming Iran is not a story of sudden disappearance. It is simply the story of a name that changed as history moved forward, while the culture, traditions, and people continued their journey through time. Thank you for taking this peaceful walk through history. Now it is time to rest. Close your eyes, breathe slowly, and allow the quiet rhythms of the past to fade gently into the night. Good night and sleep well. Before we allow our story to fully fade into the night, let us take one more slow walk through one of the most beautiful parts of Persian culture, the garden. For many centuries, gardens have held a special place in the hearts of people across the land now called Iran. In a region where deserts and dry plains stretch across wide areas, a garden can feel like a small paradise. Imagine walking through the gate of a traditional Persian garden. At once, the air feels cooler. Tall trees offer shade from the sun. Narrow water channels run gently through the garden, guiding fresh water to flowers and plants. You hear the quiet sound of flowing water. Birds move between branches. The scent of roses and jasmine floats softly in the breeze. These gardens were carefully designed to create a feeling of peace and balance. Long paths divide the garden into sections, often forming a symmetrical pattern. In the center, a fountain or pool reflects the sky above. One famous example of this style can be seen in the historic gardens of Shiraz. For centuries, travelers visiting Shiraz wrote about its beauty. They described orchards filled with orange trees and gardens where poets once sat and wrote verses. Two of the most beloved poets connected to this city are Hafez and Sadi Shirazi. Their poetry often speaks about gardens, flowers, and the gentle passing of time. In many homes, people still keep books of their poems. Sometimes families open these books during quiet evenings and read a verse or two together. Imagine sitting on a carpet beneath a tree in a peaceful garden. A lantern glows softly nearby. The sound of water trickles from a fountain. Someone reads a short poem about love, kindness, or the beauty of nature. Moments like these have been shared for hundreds of years. Even today, many people in Iran enjoy spending time in parks and gardens. Families bring simple meals, children play beneath trees, and friends sit together talking while the day slowly fades into evening. In these quiet spaces, it becomes easy to understand why poetry and reflection are such important parts of the culture. The garden itself feels like a poem. Another important part of this story is the unique location of this ancient land. If you look at a map, you will see that Iran sits between many different regions of the world. To the west are the lands of the Middle East and the Mediterranean. To the east are Central Asia and the distant routes leading toward China. To the south lies the warm Persian Gulf, and to the north stretch mountain ranges and ancient trade routes. Because of this location, the land once known as Persia became a meeting place for many cultures. For thousands of years, traders traveled through this region along famous trade networks such as the Silk Road. Caravans carrying silk, spices, precious stones, and ideas moved slowly across deserts and mountains. Imagine a long caravan of camels walking beneath the stars. Lanterns sway gently as the animals move across the desert. Traders speak softly while they travel, sharing stories about distant cities. At night, they stop near wells or small towns to rest. During these journeys, cultures mix together. Ideas about science, medicine, art, and philosophy traveled along the same roads as goods and spices. Scholars studied mathematics and astronomy. Physicians wrote medical texts that would later influence learning in many other regions. One famous thinker from this tradition was Avicenna, known in Persian as Ibn Sina. He lived about 1,000 years ago and wrote books about medicine, philosophy, and science that were studied in both the Islamic world and Europe for many centuries. This sharing of knowledge shows how the land of Persia, and later Iran, played an important role in connecting different parts of the world. It was not only a place of empires and kings. It was also a place of learning, conversation, and cultural exchange. And now, as our peaceful journey reaches its final moments, let us remember something simple and beautiful about history. History is never truly finished. The story of Persia becoming Iran is only one chapter in a much longer story that continues today. People still wake early to open their shops in busy markets. Students still walk through university gates carrying books. Families still gather around tables to share meals and laughter. Poetry is still read. Gardens are still enjoyed. Tea is still poured into small glasses during quiet conversations. And every spring, the celebration of Nowruz still welcomes the arrival of a new year with hope and renewal. Across the world, millions of people celebrate this tradition, remembering the ancient heritage that stretches back thousands of years. When we look at a map today, we see the name Iran. But when we study history, art, poetry, and culture, we also remember the name Persia. Both names belong to the same land. Both names tell parts of the same long and fascinating story. And perhaps that is the most peaceful lesson of all. Names may change as time moves forward, but the heart of a culture continues quietly through generations. Now our journey truly comes to rest. The desert winds grow calm. The gardens fall silent beneath the stars. Lanterns dim in quiet courtyards as families finish their evening tea. And somewhere in the distance, a poet's words drift softly through the night. Thank you for joining this slow walk through the history of Persia and Iran. May your thoughts feel calm, your mind relaxed, and your night peaceful. Good night and sleep well. As our peaceful journey continues a little longer, let us listen to something that has quietly connected generations across this land. Language. For thousands of years, people living in this region have spoken forms of the Persian language. The language itself has changed slowly over time, just as rivers slowly change their path across a landscape. But even with these changes, a strong thread of connection has remained. Ancient Persian, spoken during the time of Cyrus the Great, looked and sounded very different from the Persian language spoken today. The earliest forms were written using special scripts carved into stone tablets and monuments. If you could travel back in time and stand near one of those ancient carvings, you might see rows of symbols carefully etched into the rock. Each symbol carried meaning, recording victories, laws, or messages from kings. One famous example of these ancient inscriptions can still be seen at the Behistun inscription. This great carving was created during the reign of Darius the Great. It tells a story of power, leadership, and the struggles of an ancient empire. Centuries passed, and the Persian language slowly evolved. During the medieval period, a form known as Classical Persian became widely used in literature and poetry. This language gave the world some of its most beautiful works of poetry and storytelling. Poets such as Rumi and Hafez wrote verses that are still read today. Their poems are often simple and thoughtful, filled with images of nature, friendship, and quiet reflection. Many people in Iran still grow up hearing these poems from childhood. Parents may read them aloud. Teachers may share them in school. Sometimes friends recite them during gatherings. In this way, language becomes a bridge across time. A poem written hundreds of years ago can still touch someone's heart today. Even though the world now knows the country as Iran, the Persian language continues to be one of its strongest cultural traditions. Now imagine taking a slow walk through one of Iran's historic cities today. You might begin in Isfahan, a city once described by travelers as half the world because of its beauty. Wide avenues lined with trees lead toward grand squares and historic mosques. Blue tiles shine softly in the sunlight. Bridges cross calm rivers where people gather in the evening to talk and relax. Further south lies the city of Shiraz. Shiraz is often called the city of poetry and gardens. Here you can visit peaceful tomb gardens dedicated to the great poets of Persian history. Visitors walk slowly through these gardens, reading lines of poetry carved into stone. Another city rich with history is Persepolis. Today, Persepolis stands as a quiet archaeological site. Tall stone columns rise toward the sky. Carved staircases still show images of people bringing gifts from distant lands. If you walk among these ancient ruins at sunset, the stones glow softly in golden light. It becomes easy to imagine the grand ceremonies that once took place there more than 2,000 years ago. These cities remind us that history is not only something written in books, it is something that lives in buildings, streets, gardens, and monuments. Each place carries memories from different eras: ancient Persia, medieval kingdoms, and the modern nation of Iran, all layered together in the same landscape. Before we gently close our journey, it is worth remembering that the history of this land is far too rich and complex to fit into one single story. There are thousands of stories waiting in its mountains, deserts, villages, and cities. Stories of travelers crossing the Silk Road. Stories of scholars studying the stars and writing books about medicine and mathematics. Stories of artists weaving carpets that would be admired across the world. Stories of families celebrating weddings, festivals, and new beginnings. Through all of these stories, the identity of the land continued to grow and change. Sometimes the world called it Persia. Today the world calls it Iran. Yet the deeper cultural heritage flows through both names. The poetry, the music, the architecture, and the traditions all form part of the same long history. And that history continues to unfold with each new generation. Now the night is calm. Our journey through thousands of years of history has moved slowly and peacefully, like a quiet walk beneath the stars. We have seen ancient empires rise and fall. We have walked through markets and gardens. We have listened to the voices of poets and scholars. And we have discovered how the land once widely known as Persia gradually became known to the world as Iran. But perhaps the most comforting part of this story is that the heart of the culture never disappeared. It simply continued, adapting, growing, and sharing its traditions with the world. So now, as you rest and allow sleep to come gently, imagine the soft winds moving across the deserts of Iran. Imagine lanterns glowing in quiet courtyards. Imagine a poet's voice speaking softly beneath the night sky. History flows on, calm and steady. Good night, and may your sleep be peaceful. As our calm journey through history continues a little longer, let us pause to listen to another gentle part of life in the land once widely known as Persia: music. For thousands of years, music has been part of everyday life across this region. It appears during celebrations, family gatherings, festivals, and quiet moments of reflection. Imagine an evening gathering in a traditional home. Friends and family sit together on soft carpets. Tea is poured slowly into small glasses. Someone lifts a traditional instrument and begins to play a soft melody. One of the most beloved instruments in Persian music is called the setar, a small string instrument with a delicate sound. Another instrument, the tar, has deeper tones that fill the room with warm music. As the musician plays, someone may quietly sing a poem written centuries ago by a poet such as Hafez or Rumi. Their words flow gently with the music. Often these songs speak about nature, kindness, love, and the mysteries of life. They do not rush. Instead, they move slowly, allowing listeners to relax and reflect. This style of music has always matched the thoughtful spirit of Persian poetry. Now imagine a different scene. It is a wedding celebration in a town square. Lanterns glow above the gathering. Musicians play lively rhythms while people clap their hands and dance in circles. Children laugh while elders watch with warm smiles. Music, like poetry, connects generations. A melody learned from grandparents may still be played today by young musicians learning the same instruments. Art also holds an important place in the culture of this land. Walk into a traditional Persian home, and you might notice detailed patterns everywhere. Carpets display complex designs filled with flowers, vines, and geometric shapes. Tiles on walls and mosques form colorful patterns that seem almost endless. These designs reflect a long artistic tradition that values patience, precision, and beauty. Even simple everyday objects may carry artistic details. A copper bowl might be engraved with delicate lines. A ceramic plate might show patterns inspired by gardens or stars. These small details show how deeply art is woven into daily life. Through music, poetry, and craftsmanship, the culture of Persia and modern Iran continues to express itself in quiet and beautiful ways. Another gentle thread that runs through this long history is the love of learning. For many centuries, scholars from this region studied mathematics, astronomy, medicine, philosophy, and literature. Libraries and schools existed in many cities where students gathered to learn from teachers and from ancient books. One of the most famous scholars in this tradition was Avicenna. He lived around 1,000 years ago and wrote a remarkable book about medicine known as the Canon of Medicine. For hundreds of years, this book was studied by doctors across the Middle East and even in Europe. Imagine a quiet study room in a medieval city. Shelves filled with manuscripts line the walls. A student sits beside a small oil lamp, carefully reading a handwritten text. Outside, the sounds of the city grow quiet as night falls. In places like this, knowledge slowly passed from one generation to the next. Scholars also studied the stars. Using simple instruments and careful observation, astronomers mapped the movements of planets and recorded the patterns of the night sky. Their curiosity helped expand the world's understanding of science. Learning was never limited to scholars alone. In homes and markets, people shared practical knowledge about farming, trade, cooking, and crafts. Parents taught children skills that had been passed down for generations. A baker might teach a child how to prepare dough for flatbread. A carpet weaver might show a young apprentice how to tie thousands of tiny knots to create a beautiful design. In this way, knowledge moved quietly through everyday life. Even today, education remains an important part of life in Iran. Universities, schools, and research centers continue the long tradition of learning. Students still study poetry, science, medicine, engineering, and many other subjects. The curiosity that existed in ancient Persia continues into the present day. As we gently approach the final moments of our story, it becomes clear that the question we began with has a simple answer. How did Persia become Iran? The change happened officially in 1935, when the government led by Reza Shah Pahlavi asked the world to use the name Iran instead of Persia. But in truth, the name Iran had existed for thousands of years in the language and culture of the people who lived there. Persia was the name the outside world had long used, especially when describing the ancient empire founded by Cyrus the Great. Over time, the modern nation chose to use its traditional name on the global stage. Yet both names continue to remind us of the same place. Persia evokes images of ancient kings, poets, gardens, and grand empires. Iran represents the modern nation and its people today. Both names belong to the same long and fascinating history. And that history continues to unfold with every passing day. Now our journey truly reaches its quiet conclusion. The stars shine softly above distant deserts. Ancient ruins rest beneath moonlight. Gardens sleep beneath the gentle sound of flowing water. Somewhere in the world, a poet's verse is being read. Somewhere, a family shares tea in the evening. And somewhere, a student opens a book to learn about the past. The story of Persia and Iran continues quietly, just as it has for thousands of years. Thank you for joining this peaceful walk through history. Close your eyes. Let your thoughts drift slowly like clouds across a calm sky, and allow the quiet rhythms of the past to guide you gently into sleep. Good night. And now, our quiet story reaches its final moments. Tonight we traveled slowly through thousands of years of history. We walked through ancient cities and peaceful villages. We listened to the voices of poets, scholars, and travelers who once crossed this remarkable land. We saw the rise of great empires, including the one founded by Cyrus the Great, whose kingdom helped introduce the name Persia to much of the world. We wandered through grand stone halls at Persepolis, imagining the footsteps of messengers and visitors who once gathered there from distant lands. We paused in quiet gardens and listened to the gentle poetry of writers like Rumi and Hafez, whose words still echo through time. And along the way, we slowly discovered how the land once widely known as Persia gradually became known across the world as Iran. The moment came in the year 1935, when the government led by Reza Shah Pahlavi asked other nations to use the name Iran in official communication. But as we learned tonight, the story is not about one moment alone. The name Iran had lived in the language and traditions of the people for centuries. Persia and Iran were never truly separate stories. They were simply two names connected to the same land, the same culture, and the same long history. Empires came and went. Dynasties rose and faded. Yet the quiet rhythms of life continued. Families shared meals. Traders filled markets with goods and stories. Poets wrote verses about love, nature, and the passing of time. And through all of these moments, the spirit of the land carried forward from generation to generation. So when we ask how Persia became Iran, the answer is calm and simple. The land never disappeared. Its name simply changed in the eyes of the world, while its history and culture continued to live on. Now the night grows peaceful. The ancient ruins rest beneath the moon. The gardens grow quiet. Soft winds move gently across the deserts and mountains of this timeless land. Our journey through history slowly fades into stillness. Thank you for joining this calm walk through the story of Persia and Iran. Close your eyes, take a slow breath, and allow the quiet echoes of the past to drift softly into sleep. Good night and rest well.